As I record this, we are not only still under the threat of the COVID-19 pandemic, but people across the country, and in fact across the world, are demonstrating against the systematic racism that continues to poison our country. It may seem odd to talk about shared folklore during a national crisis, but the power of story to model what it means to be courageous in the face of evil is timeless, and a useful tool for navigating troubled times. Keep watching to find out why this particular scene keeps showing up in memes and articles and videos, why it's so powerful, and how you can use The Lord of the Rings or any other modern epic to relate to the world during a time of crisis. Hi, I'm Christine, and this is the video channel of Project FanCare, a nonprofit dedicated to helping people use film, TV, and fandom to deal with depression, anxiety, and trauma. If you're new here, please subscribe for new content every week, and follow us on social media to keep up to date with our schedule and become part of the Project FanCare community. Right after states started to close down and our lives were upended by COVID-19, I started to see this particular scene from The Fellowship of the Ring show up on social media.
I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
There were memes and articles, and a few weeks ago, I watched a video called What the Fellowship of the Ring Can Teach Us About Dealing with Hardship. The video used Frodo's character arc in The Fellowship of the Ring to illustrate a psychological concept called radical acceptance, which basically means accepting when you can't change your external circumstances and facing them with integrity. The YouTube channel that made this video is called Cinema Therapy and is now one of my very favorite channels. Cinema Therapy is the brainchild of marriage and family therapist Jonathan Decker, filmmaker Megan Seawright, and writer Megan Seawright. Each video uses a film to illustrate what a particular psychological concept looks like in action. Then it gives you tips on applying that concept to your own lives. I've linked their channel down below, and I highly recommend it. You'll probably end up binge watching all their videos like I did. As part of my research to find out why this particular scene is so powerful, I interviewed them and asked them what they thought it was about this scene that resonated so much with people. And while this interview was recorded before the tide of national and international demonstrations against police brutality, the idea that stories are a refuge during times of crisis is timeless and applies to recent events as well as COVID-19 and things that may be going on with you personally. I'm here with Jonathan Decker and Alan and Megan Seawright, who are the YouTube channel Cinema Therapy. And I. We were just talking about the power of story. And when the pandemic hit, the first thing that came to my mind was the scene from Fellowship of the Ring with Gandalf and Frodo. And then the memes started popping up. And then I found your video and your video channel, and I watched it. And after watching all of your other videos, I said, what is it about this scene? Why did it immediately come to my mind when the pandemic started? And it apparently came to everybody else's mind too. So maybe Megan, I'll start with you. Why do you think that is? What is it about that scene?
Essentially, Tolkien was trying to create a folklore. And folklore serves as sort of a cultural wayfinding story, right? Stories in general, especially in folklore, are things that people use to relate to the world around them, to make meaning out of the world around them. And that is exactly what Tolkien was trying to do with Lord of the Rings, was to create a folklore that created meaning for people in the world around them. And And he used a lot of archetypal characters, right? So Gandalf is a very archetypal character here, one that is meant to be someone you look to for wisdom. And Frodo is meant to be much more like us, sort of an average person going on this journey, dealing with these hardships. So already we are meant to relate to Frodo going on this journey, and we are meant to look to Gandalf as someone to give guidance, to give comfort, to give wisdom. And so the scene is perfectly set for us when we are going through something difficult to already relate to that and to grasp onto that to find meaning.
So when Tolkien was writing it, he might have been thinking that very thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that people were going to think of this scene when they were in trials or hard times.
Absolutely. I mean, he wrote Gandalf as the archetype of the wise sage. So he's created this character that is designed for people to look to when they are dealing with something difficult.
And, as far as the filmmaking goes, that's one of those scenes that Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, the screenwriters and filmmakers, talked about in their commentary. That is a scene that was in the very first draft of the script and never changed, because it came straight out of Tolkien, and they knew this is the crux of this film. Like, this is one of the most important thematic things that's going to happen in the Fellowship of the Ring, that's going to, propel everyone into the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Now, your video itself is about how Frodo's character arc is an illustration of radical acceptance. And you talk about radical acceptance in the video. I didn't know it had a term. When you described it, I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
But a lot of things have terms that I don't know have terms. So can you give a little quick description of radical acceptance, and then maybe how it has to do with Frodo's arc?
Radical acceptance means looking at your situation and not expending energy on the things that are outside of your control, and instead focusing on those things that you can control. So when it comes to Frodo and his arc, Frodo, like Bilbo, is a Shire person. He likes his books, he likes his garden, he likes his community, he likes comfort. He's not super keen on adventures and adventuring. And Gandalf shows up, and when they discover what the ring is and this is what's at stake, Frodo is, okay, can somebody else take it? Can somebody else do it? And as soon as he realizes, no, it has to be me, he squares up and he gets to work. And but even throughout, they get to Rivendell, and he's like, all right, well, we got to Rivendell, so let's let the elves take it, and let's let this fellowship group take it. Frodo's at the fellowship meeting essentially as a handoff. And that's something that I hadn't realized on previous versions of previous watching. It's like, well, Frodo starts his quest, and the whole story is about his quest, and the quest ends. But if you actually look at Fellowship as a standalone arc, he is trying to get out of this until the end of the film, when he says, okay. And then that sets up the next two films where he's all in.
One of the benefits of being a fan that I talk about and that I tell people when I speak in my panels is that these inspiring scenes and moments and lines, as a fan, you've already internalized them. They are already in your head. You don't have to go looking for them. Like I said, as soon as the pandemic happened, that scene was in my head. And it's because we have watched these films and TV shows so many times that we can quote them. So that's a real benefit, I think, of being an Uber fan. And having this stuff inside of us is, we know it. We don't have to say, what was that line that Gandalf was saying? It's already there.
That's one of the reasons that Jonathan and I were so excited to start the channel, is to take these things that are just kind of percolating in the back of your mind and, explain ways that you can use the knowledge that you already have, the scriptures that you've already memorized. Mm-hmm. And how can you apply it in your life so that it's not just time you wasted watching a movie?
Thank you so much for being part of this. I'm so excited to see what new videos you're going to be doing. And
us too. Really, likewise back at you.
Never finish them.
The stories that endure, and are retold generation after generation, are stories about the human condition. They help us process our thoughts and emotions and help us relate to the world around us. Tolkien knew this, and his view of the importance of story is illustrated by what could be the most famous scene from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Sam's Two Towers speech, which basically lays out the importance of shared folklore.
It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing. This shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you. That meant something. Even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going.
Studies show that emotional involvement in something makes learning about that thing easier. And stories are great learning tools because they get us emotionally involved while still allowing us a little bit of distance because it is not our story. And as Megan said, Tolkien knew that folklore was important and a way of relating to the world around us. And he specifically designed The Lord of the Rings so that we could internalize it and use it to help us process our feelings during times of crisis. Now, using The Lord of the Rings as a model for processing crisis is just one more example of how we as fans can use the stories that we have already internalized, the films, books, and TV shows that we can quote by heart, to help us look at our situations objectively and take action. And it doesn't just work with The Lord of the Rings. Marvel's Infinity Saga, the original Star Wars trilogy, the Harry Potter books are all examples of epic modern folklore. And they all show us how we can implement radical acceptance into our lives and respond to whatever crisis comes our way, big or small, national or personal. Now, I'm recording this in June of 2020, and so far the year has been a big mess of stress, crisis, and upheaval. But the human instinct to learn and process through story is timeless. And it will serve you today, and it will serve you for the rest of your life. Now, that scene between Gandalf and Frodo is a perfect model of responding to crisis. But it's certainly not the only one. What is your go-to film or TV show or book or line of dialogue or scene that you watch during times of crisis? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this content and want to make sure you don't miss a video, please subscribe. And if you want to watch more videos about how film, TV, and fandom can help with depression, anxiety, and trauma, check out our playlists.